Good morning to everyone. I'm Maria Petrie Martin, Director of Board Operations at the State Board, and we are officially going live for this hearing.
All right. Thank you. My name is Dixon Phillips, and I'm one of the hearing officers here today, along with Ken Sue. We'll introduce ourselves further in a moment. But this is the hearing pursuant to Section 26.3 of the Charter of Eastside Stream Academy to review the decision of the State Board of Education not to renew the charter. Again, Ken and I will introduce ourselves, and I'd ask for each of the participants to identify themselves and to identify your association, and others as well, other than the presenters could do so. So again, my name is Dixon Phillips. I'm an attorney in private practice. I am primarily represent clients in various commercial and other matters. I also work as a mediator and an arbitrator. In that connection, I'm one of the approved hearing officers to hear matters involving dismissal and discipline of public school teachers and administrators, and I've also served as hearing officer and mediator in a number of other public school matters. I'm here as a neutral party, of course, hearing officer. Ken, would you like to introduce yourself?
Like Dixon, I'm a lawyer in private practice. I specialize in public school law. I've represented school boards, a few charters, and community colleges in various matters. And I'm, like Dixon here, as a neutral decision maker on the issues that both OCS and Eastside Stream choose to raise today.
And I'll say another word about the process here, but yeah, could we have introductions from the others?
My name is Ashley Beccaro. I am the director of the Office of Charter Schools, and I will be representing OCS and DPI in this appeal hearing.
Thank you.
My name is Natasha Norins, and I work with Ashley Beccaro in the Office of Charter Schools with compliance and policies.
Are there others from the Office of Charter Schools present?
Yes, I'm Nikki Nowinski, education consultant with the Office of Charter Schools, working with CSAB and amendments.
Okay.
Ms. Nowinski, you used an acronym. Could you let us know what that stands for?
Yes, CSAB with the Charter School Advisory Board.
Thank you.
I help support their work.
All right. What about from Eastside Stream Academy?
Yes, I'll go first. Good morning, everyone. My name is Walter Bowers. I'm also a practicing attorney here in Mecklenburg County, Cabarrus area. I also happen to be the board chair for Eastside Stream Academy. And also we have here with us today in the room, Dr. Penn, who is the second ranking person on our board. We have Dr. Edward Alexander, who is currently serving as head of school. We have Miss Mary Smith, one of our board members. We have Miss Sharida Stevens, our finance manager, and then we have Mr. Davis, who is also working as an assistant dean and in other capacities here at the school.
Recording in progress.
I'm Dr. Linda Cruz, the founder of Eastside Stream Academy.
And I am Warren Shin, and I'm a board member. I was a board member 5 years ago and recently rejoined about a year and a half ago.
And my name is Taurus Sellers. I'm with Stars Math and English Academy. We're providing programming to Eastside Stream Academy.
I'm sorry. Could you identify your association again, affiliation?
Yes, Stars Math and English Academy.
And what is your affiliation with this matter?
Yeah, we're providing academic enrichment programming to students at ESA.
Great, very good. Okay. All right. So again, has everybody identified themselves as participating here? All right. Okay. So again, this is a hearing to review the decision of the State Board to not renew the charter of Eastside Stream Academy. The directive is that Mr. Sue and I will review this matter on the existing record and make a recommendation to the board, State Board, for a final decision in the matter. I view our role as we view our role principally as to review the decision as to whether the facts in the record support the decision and whether it's consistent with the law. If we should find either of those things not to be true, then we would embody that in our recommendation back to the board. As this summary implies, this is a review on this existing record, and therefore we will not be taking additional evidence. We'll not have witnesses or additional documents submitted as evidence or exhibits, rather, but we will invite presentation argument from the representatives from the Office of State Office of Charters, schools, and from the Academy. We have allotted to each side 30 minutes to use as you choose, with the Office of State Charter Schools going first. Ms. Picaro, you can certainly reserve some of your 30 minutes for rebuttal if you so chose. And then we're allowing some time for Mr. Sue and I to ask questions as follow-ups, but we've agreed that we would defer questions other than questions going simply clarifications. We'll defer those until after your presentation. Does anyone have any questions about that process before we get underway?
Yes, I have one brief question just to be clear. Will both parties will be able to present their information without interruption? In other words, will there be objections or anything of that nature?
Well, certainly my view is we would follow usual expectations that Eastside can present their case, as it were, their argument. There were some focus for exit. I'm not sure what that might be. I don't know that we would necessarily preclude it, but we're not acting under the rules of evidence here. We're again simply looking at the existing record, and therefore there wouldn't be any rules of evidence necessarily we're applying. I suppose if there were a question whether some part of the argument was or was not referencing a matter already in the record, that could be an appropriate point to be made, I think. Although I think I would ask generally both sides to defer those points until your own presentation, unless it seems necessary to make that point during the presentation.
Mr. Phillips, may I add something briefly?
Yeah.
Mr. Bowers, as an attorney, I think from our point of view, this was in the manner of an appellate argument, and it's just as Mr. Phillips has said. If you have concerns about whether, for example, the other side has presented something that's new evidence or based on something that's not on the record, it would make most sense to me that you would reserve that concern to your portion of the argument.
Thank you both for the clarity.
Right. Well, thank you for the question. That was helpful. All right. I believe we're ready to proceed. Ms. Beccaro.
All right. So again, my name is Ashley Beccaro. I am the director of the Office of Charter Schools, and I am representing the Office of Charter Schools and the Department of Public Instruction in this appeal review of the non-renewal of Eastside Stream Academy. I will begin by giving a brief history of the school and the authority given to the state board to make decisions regarding the final renewal or non-renewal of charters. I will briefly explain the renewal process and the findings made pursuant to the renewal of Eastside Stream Academy. And then I will summarize the reasoning and authority used by the state board in recommending non-renewal. So first, Eastside Stream Academy is a charter school that is currently operating in Mecklenburg County. They serve grades K to 8. And Eastside Stream Academy was originally chartered as Charlotte Choice Charter with an effective date of July 1st, 2013. The name change from Charlotte Choice Charter to Eastside Stream Academy was approved in February 2020. And hereafter, I will refer to the school in its current name, which is Eastside Stream Academy. The charter for Eastside Stream contained several binding provisions, including the following. 26.1 lays out the grounds for termination of a charter's term. It states the state board may terminate this charter on any of the following grounds: failure to meet the requirements for student performance, failure to meet generally accepted standards of fiscal management, violation of law, material violations of any of the conditions, standards, or procedures set forth in the charter, 2/3 of the faculty or instructional support staff requesting that, or other good cause identified. The charter for Eastside Stream is due to expire June 30th, 2023. North Carolina General Statute requires the State Board of Education to review the operations, including the meeting of financial, academic, and governance standards of each charter school prior to the expiration of its charter, and to renew the charter up to a period of 10 years or to not renew. The applicable statute is 115C-218.6, the review and renewal of charters. That statute sets out the criteria for awarding a 10-year charter renewal. If a school does not qualify for a 10-year charter renewal, the statute states that the state board may renew the charter for a period of less than 10 years or not renew the charter. So the authority of the state board to not renew a charter is clearly set out in general statute. Now I'm going to take you, give a little bit of a look at the renewal process that our office conducts. The renewal process for each charter school takes place over a period of 2 years and begins with the submission of a self-study. This requirement is outlined in North Carolina Administrative Code. Eastside Stream submitted its self-study November 30th, 2021. So that renewal process started at that point. A renewal visit from the Office of Charter Schools took place remotely on April 28th, 2022. Consultants Claire Porter and Jenna Cook attended on behalf of the Office of Charter Schools and DPI. The renewal visit consists of a tour of the school and multiple interview groups, including staff, board members, and parents. The renewal visit feedback from OCS included, but was not limited to, the following notes. The board and administration are encouraged to take a deeper dive into the turnover of teaching staff and administration. The board and administration are encouraged to talk to teachers about supports needed to deliver curriculum with fidelity. The board is advised to post meeting times, encourage parents to attend, and post board meeting minutes in compliance with public records law. The board is encouraged to review the role of governance versus management to ensure leadership is empowered to lead and set a vision for the school. The board is encouraged to review nepotism and conflict of interest policies and procedures. And finally, the board was asked to provide requested information from a September 21st, 2021 site visit, which had previously not been provided. Following the renewal self-study and the site visits and interviews, OCS staff began the process of compiling data to present to the Charter Schools Advisory Board, also referred to as the CSAB. The CSAB is the board tasked with hearing and making recommendations regarding renewal terms to the State Board of Education. So all of the information presented today has been previously presented to the Charter Schools Advisory Board, and is which they use to make their recommendation on a renewal term. That is then forwarded to the State Board of Education, and the State Board makes the final determination. At the December 6, 2022 regularly scheduled CSAB meeting, Eastside Stream Academy was invited to report on the school's status academically, financially, and operationally. This presentation is required of all renewal schools which do not qualify statutorily for a 10-year renewal. Eastside Stream did not qualify for a 10-year renewal. Jenna Cook, an OCS consultant, presented the school's academic history. The academic history of Eastside Stream Academy included the following data. The 2018 school performance grade was a D. The 2019 school performance grade was an F. The 2022 school performance grade was an F. The 2018 academic growth was exceeded. The 2019 academic growth was not met. The 2022 academic growth was not met, and the school was considered continually low performing pursuant to state law. The 2018 grade level proficiency was 40%. The 2019 grade level proficiency was 34%. And the 2022 grade level proficiency was 25%. The 2018 academic comparability to the LEA, so in this case, the comparison of grade level proficiency to Mecklenburg County schools, was negative 20%, meaning that Eastside Stream was 20 points below or 20% below the average for Mecklenburg. 2019 academic comparability was negative 26%, and the 2022 academic comparability to LEA was negative 25%. Ms. Cook presented the school's compliance history. She stated there was a testing violation in July 2022, and that the beginning teacher support program was conducting additional reviews due to noncompliance and unresponsiveness. Eastside Stream Academy's board and administration presented to the CSAB, and the CSAB had a chance to ask questions of the school and its board. At the February 6, 2023 regularly scheduled CSAB meeting, Shirley McFadden with the NCDPI School Business Office presented the school's financial history. She stated the school had been on financial noncompliance for 3 years, but had continued to improve and is now removed from financial noncompliance. Following the financial review on February 6, 2023, the CSAB heard from the school's administration and board. The board was represented by Board Chair Walter Bowers. Bruce Friend, the CSAB member, asked why the board did not attend, and Mr. Bowers stated that the board did not feel it was necessary because Mr. Bowers could represent well enough. Mr. Friend asked Mr. Bowers why there was so much leadership turnover and why there had been 10 to 11 principals in the school's history. And Mr. Bowers stated he had asked the same question when he came on board and discovered some challenges, including culture. Eric Sanchez, a CSAB member, stated this is the farthest from growth we've seen today and asked for assurances for a plan for academic improvement is in place. Mr. Bowers stated that before academics, we need to talk leadership. Mr. Bowers spoke about turnover and history of staff and board, and Mr. Sanchez responded that he is looking for a better and more detailed response as to how you are going to turn the ship. Bartley Danielson, another CSAB member, asked if this staff turnover is normal for charter schools and possibly related to pay. Ashley Beccaro, the director for OCS, stated that this has been a reoccurring issue for the school that is noted in site visits going back several years. She stated that it is very difficult to help a school when its leadership is always different. She also stated that the teachers who have resigned and contacted OCS stated the reason was the environment and not the pay. OCS conducts site visits of low-performing charter schools regularly, including for Eastside Stream Academy. Site visit feedback from 2018 to 2001 show consistent patterns of concerns related to staff turnover and academics, among other things. Site visit reports are provided to the school following a site visit, as well as to the Charter Schools Advisory Board during the renewal process. The April 17th, 2018 site visit conducted by a previous OCS consultant, Keebler Williams, noted the following. The school needs to make teacher walkthroughs with written feedback a priority. STEM is on the fringes of instruction at best. School must make student achievement a priority. Current 4 board members are not enough for a strong board. Feedback was provided in 2017 regarding the school improvement plan, and to date, none of those questions or feedback have been addressed. Elements of rigorous instruction or content were observed in only 1 of 11 classes. And elements of differentiation were not observed in any classroom. At the April 17th, 2018 site visit, the principal was asked, to what do you attribute your school performance grade of an F for the last 3 years? The principal at the time, Cassandra Gregory, responded, there were people in place who really didn't understand the job and how students learn, and training was not there. Similar responses were provided during the renewal interview and in subsequent site visits. Following the April 17th, 2018 site visit, Dr. Williams provided the school with a report and 3 pages of recommended actions and resources. On September 13th, 2019, so slightly over a year later, another site visit was conducted by OCS consultant Ashley Beccaro. So that was myself when I was a consultant. At that time, there was a new principal leading the school, Gregory Davis. Following the site visit, the following actions were recommended. The support of beginning teachers was needed, and they needed to utilize DPI regional support. They needed to leverage strong teachers to assist those who need support. They needed to join the multi-tiered support system cohort, which DPI provides. They need to provide consistent student feedback on work. Behavior management techniques need to be consistent. There needed to be an increase in academic rigor. They needed to consider how to use annotation skills to increase rigor and to provide precise praise to students. On September 21st, 2021, another site visit was conducted by Ashley Beccaro. At that time, there was another new principal leading the school, Alicia McCree. Following that site visit, the following actions were recommended. Teacher development needed for new curriculum. Teacher development needed for mathematics instruction. Students need explicit instruction for utilizing workbooks seen in classrooms. There's a lack of urgency in classrooms and inconsistent behavior management needs addressing. Although the school reports utilizing Teach Like a Champion, very few techniques were observed. Recommended a book study and practice sessions for the staff. Board asked to evaluate why such high turnover with administration. The September 21st, 2021 site visit report also included follow-up requests related to headcount, virtual plans, teaching staff licensure, and a history of school administrators. That recommended information was not provided by the school and continued to be requested into the renewal process. The school was also reminded that a temporary relocation requires Office of Charter Schools approval after it was discovered that a previous relocation had not been disclosed to the state. At each site visit spanning from 2018 to 2021, prior to the renewal process, the school's board and administration was provided with numerous recommended actions and available resources, including supports provided through the Office of Charter Schools in the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction. The Office of Charter Schools has compiled a history of site visits showing consistent recommended actions related to academic low performance, which were not implemented, in a history of high administration turnover, sometimes more than one principal per year. Robust academic data, previous site visit reports, compliance reports, and financial history data were all provided to the Charter Schools Advisory Board. The school's administration and board had the opportunity to attend and to speak at the December 6, 2022 and the February 6, 2023 CSAB meetings. Upon consideration of this information, CSAB unanimously voted to not renew Eastside Stream Academy at its February 6, 2023 meeting. The state board considered this recommendation at its March and April regular meetings. At its April 6, 2023 meeting, the state board voted unanimously to approve the non-renewal of Eastside Stream Academy's charter. State board's decision to non-renew is consistent with General Statute 115C-218.6, which states that the state board may renew the charter for a period of less than 10 years or not renew the charter if a charter school does not meet the statutory requirements for a tenure. State board's decision is also consistent with 115C-218.95, which allows the state board to terminate, not renew, or seek applicants to assume a school's charter if any of the following apply: failure to meet the requirements for student performance contained in the charter, failure to meet generally accepted standards of fiscal management, violations of law, material violations of any condition, standard, or procedure set forth in the charter, 2/3 of the faculty or instructional support requesting it, or other good cause identified. Additionally, if a charter school is continually low performing, the state board is authorized to terminate, not renew, or seek applicants to assume the charter through a competitive bid process. That's in 115C-218.95. After reviewing CSAB's recommendation in all relevant documents, the state board found that Eastside Stream Academy did not meet the academic, financial, and governance standards required for charter renewal. Specifically, the state board's acceptance of CSAB's recommendation for non-renewal was based on the following. 1, the school has failed to meet the requirements for student performance contained in the school's charter. 2, the school is continually low performing and has been a low performing school for all of the years of its operation, which is almost 10 years. In addition, the school has only met growth for one of the last 3 academic years. 3, the academic performance of the school is greater than 5 percentage points lower than the Mecklenburg School District and the public school district in which the charter school is located. And finally, the school has failed to meet generally accepted standards of fiscal management, as it has a consistent history of being placed on financial noncompliance status. Through its appeal of the state board decision, Eastside Stream Academy is requesting a 1-year renewal to, quote, provide our students with the opportunity to complete the school year without disruption and to provide the school with the time to complete the charter assumption process. The charter is set to expire June 30th, 2023, which would allow the students opportunity to complete the current year as well as to complete any end of grade testing. In cases of non-renewal or termination, Statute 115C-218.95 authorizes the state board to seek applicants to assume the charter through a competitive bid process established by the state board. North Carolina Administrative Code sets out the factors to be considered in determining whether a different nonprofit entity may assume a charter of an existing charter school. Factors relevant to the existing charter school include academic performance and financial status. Those factors, among with many others, are located in Administrative Code 1606G.0524. In voting to non-renew the charter in light of the failure to meet academic and financial standards, the state board has determined an assumption is not appropriate. In conclusion, the state board acted within its authority and with reason to non-renew the charter of Eastside Stream Academy. I'm happy to take any questions if you have them at this point, or wait till the end if you prefer.
All right. Well, thank you. Maybe we reserve about 14 minutes.
Okay.
All right. Mr. Bowers, would you like to start out for the school?
Yes. Again, good morning, everyone. I'll jump straight in. we thank the advisory board for this opportunity. We appreciate their diligence as it relates to the renewal process, and certainly we appreciate all of the feedback that they gave us throughout the process. But the reason we're here today is that we do believe that there was an error as it relates to how the data was presented. But I think I'm going to start with my strongest concern before we counter some of the data points. If you were to take everything that the Department of Public Instruction has presented as true, if you look at CSAB exhibit, their minutes from February 6th of 2023, page 6, there's a document there which essentially was sent to us, which let us know that a decision had been made to actually, a preliminary decision had been made to actually provide us with a 3-year renewal. If you look at that CSAB minutes document, February 6, 2023, on page 6, it specifically notes the schools that 3-year or non-renewal, but it also notes the schools that the time. So for some, it may have been 3 years. For some, it may have been others. Our concern here is, and our question, which we believe is an error, is what happened between February and the decision in April. Based on what we were able to hear in the two meetings that we did attend, DPI testified that they had received some calls during the renewal process that changed their mind. We specifically, we were not given information on who these calls were, what information it contained, but testimony from DPI, more specifically the advisory board to the state, was based on that information that they received. They changed their mind. Here's the problem that we have with that first problem. First and foremost, we truly believe that's a violation of the 14th Amendment, specifically as it relates to due process. There are a couple of cases floating around, one out of the Sixth Circuit specifically, where I think that, and I can send you guys the site, was Dovey versus Baum, where they were investigating a school, something in regards to maybe a Title IX issue with sexual harassment of some sort involving a fraternity. And during the course of the investigation, they talked to people that were at the party, things of that nature. But the one thing that they failed to do, they failed to provide the accused with the name of those individuals or an opportunity to cross-examine those individuals. That's a major problem. When you go back and you listen to the recordings and you look at the exhibit, February 6, 2023, we were given 3 years. All of the data here was available when the decision was made, right? We've been told repeatedly that the decision that we're looking at is not based on new information. All of the information that that was just reported was available when we received the notice on February 26th that we would probably get an additional 3 years. Then there was testimony given again by Mrs. Bacuro's office that they received these secret witnesses, if you will, and because we didn't have an opportunity to counter, we didn't have an opportunity to provide a statement, we didn't have an opportunity to cross-examine them. To this date, we have no idea what information that they received, and that's a major problem. I don't even know how we could even have a fair opportunity to address whether or not those were disgruntled employees, but we didn't have an opportunity to say anything. So that's the first thing that I think is an error. We have to deal with error. I think there's case law that supports a tribunal that does not allow cross-examination, and especially when you're relying on the witness statement of an unknown secret witness. I think that's a major problem. But then,
Mr. Bowers, may I ask you that case name again?
Sure, that was Doe versus Baum. It's out of the Sixth Circuit, and I'll be happy to send you all a couple other cases, and I'll actually send you the site. I'm having some connection issues, but I'll see the actual site to it if you need it. And as we proceed forward, I think that is That was the crux of it. It was too much. It was too many people that, gave information that we didn't have a chance to cross-examine, didn't have a chance to respond to. And again, we certainly believe that that was a violation of the 14th Amendment. For the sake of time, I want to kind of go forward and deal with some of the other areas that there were errors that we had to deal with. One of the errors also is that even in the presentation of the meeting notes, respectfully, those were not. We object to the notion that those were the actual minutes. It appeared to be more of a paraphrasing and reflection of somebody trying to recapture. But when you look at what was actually written in comparison to what was actually stated, they're not the same. For example, when asked about why the board was there, I never said it. They didn't feel it was necessary for them to be here. What we said was based on the questions that were presented to us, we brought the individuals that could answer those questions. We were never told that we needed to bring the entire board. And that was kind of the theme of the era. It appeared that the advisory board would, the information that was presented would be partial or not in our favor, but it certainly wasn't neutral and it wasn't in its entirety. And those are some of the things that we'll look at, even when you look at the exhibits that we presented in comparison to the exhibits that were presented to the advisory board. You'll notice that everything that we presented was not necessarily presented to the state. We certainly don't have any record of it from the oral hearings. We had no reflection to any discussion on some of the explanations and things of that nature as it relates to our presentation. At this time, I want to transition, and I'm going to talk about some errors as it relates to the data and how the data was presented. And at this time, I'm going to first start with Mr. Davis, and then follow up with Mr. Sellers that may be able to provide some insight. And again, this is information that was previously provided. Mr. Davis.
Good morning, everybody. Mr. Carroll, I listened to you a little while and you referenced that statute on there, and I just wanted to mention a little bit of that statute there because, it says that charter school will not be terminated solely based on low performance if it has met growth in each of the following percent.
Sorry, it might be helpful. Could Mr. David?
Can you hear me? I'm gonna move a little bit. Oh, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I was referring to your statute of 115C 218.95 on page 27, which everybody's familiar with that, but I'll just reference the part where a charter school will not be terminated solely based on low performance if it has met growth in each of the immediately preceding 3 years, or it has implemented a strategic improvement plan, which we have done. So one of the errors that, and you mentioned this, Ms. Picaro, which you got to the end where you said even in 10 years, but if we look on page 2 of your document that you provided here, we have met in 2015 and 16, we met growth. 2016-17, we met growth. 2017-18, we exceeded growth on page 2, what you mentioned there. So in all the 10 years that we provide, that is incorrect of what you said there. We listened to you many times. We have implemented, and I was principal, you are correct with what you said. One of the things that you said, we did not put things into place that you recommended, which is not true. Okay, we looked at the data. We hired teachers that were qualified for that data in here. And I'm referencing, again, on page 2 here, because we talked about the 26%. Okay, on page 2, in 2018-19, we were at 26%. However, you stated we were not increasing. We were, because 21-22, we were 25%. So we did increase. We did. So that kind of null and voids that part where you said we didn't increase. We did. So it does show that we are improving. Even to this point today, we were even a lot higher. We're going to be a lot higher than that score that you see right there because of all the things that were recommended that we put into place into this school, which we are doing. And I'm going to look at some of the notes that I had wrote here for you. So my eyes are down here. All right, so again, we met growth in 2016-17 and 2018 have exceeded growth. Our scholars and our staff have been working hard towards achieving these goals. Okay, our goal is getting to that letter C. And based on the data that we have right now using the state approved platform, iReady, and the state approved NC check-ins, we are working hard towards that right now because what we're looking at right now in our scholars is seeing greens. We are moving our bubble kids from yellow to green. Our red students that were here from red to yellow to green, we're working hard. We need this time. This is not a good time for anybody to think about shutting the school down because we got these kids where we need these kids right now. It's worth noting that 50% of our scholars came to us 2 to 4 grade levels behind, and 20% were 1 grade level behind. So we faced these challenges in that year that we're talking about, that 19 and 20, 2018, 19 and 20. So 2018, our enrollment dropped. 2019, we hit the 20 COVID. 2021, we're still dealing with the COVID and everything. So we're kind of have to bring these kids from the bottom all the way up. Okay, so what we did was we put in platforms that are going to do this. We pulled out every stop possible that are going to raise these kids' scores here. So to measure our scholars' growth, we use, again, this iReady and NC check-ins, as well as our formative assessments that are monitored by teachers and administrators. During that challenge time right here, we had to take our students, and administrators, like I taught classes when I had to. I tutored classes when I had to. We brought in specialized tutors to continue to monitor our student success. We chosen to give 4 benchmarks. This year alone, we gave 4 benchmarks. Each of those benchmarks, you can see the academic growth in every single one of those kids going up, up, up. Case we got a little bit of kids, but I personally know every single kid in the school and every single kid what they can actually do and are doing. It's amazing right now what these kids are doing.
Mr. Davis,
yes.
I want you to focus on how that was presented as relates to how we were prepared to see the mess, right? When we look at the totality of those numbers, while we feel there's an error to look at the totality of those numbers.
If Mr. Bowers, we can't hear you if you mean to be heard.
Mr. Davis to clarify why we believed it was an error in regards to how the advisory board compared Eastside Stream Academy to the local schools, and I was asking Mr. Davis to speak on that, and that was in regards to the individual's growth and things of that nature that we discussed.
Right. So what? I'm going to come over a little bit here. You can hear me, correct?
Yes.
And that is unfair to compare that, but that's because we are an individual school. We are a charter school here. It is kind of unfair with the big schools here because our individual growth on each of the students here are projecting, our trajectory is going up and up and up on every one of these kids. Now, the kids that were here with us and stuck with us, those kids right now are on the rise. Those are our bubble kids and our green kids right now. Our new kids coming in from CMS, by the way, and from the schools that we have a lot of, or out of state right now, kids coming in. And those are the kids I talked about earlier that are 2 to 4 years behind. And I can give you individual examples all day long. I had a 4th grader who came to us from CMS at reading at a kindergarten level. Well, he couldn't read, actually. He is reading now because of our teachers that we put into place here. I can give you so many examples from CMS, the kids that we've got over here, that we have moved from the scale, from our iReady data, as you can see over here, and where they were when they came in here this year, last year. So we're moving those kids are in the right direction. It isn't, we're comparing the big school to our school. It's all kids right now. It's really just not fair for you to do that from CMS to our school here, because each one of our our kids, we take individually and we know the data from each one of these kids and where they're headed, and we pick apart that data. Okay.
Yeah, so, and essentially, to stay on task, the error here again is that we believe that the way the data was presented to the state board was in error because it failed to reflect the growth. There was never any discussion about the fact that we did grow students, more specifically, again, students that were much further away. Using the analogy to make it plain, if these students were at F minus when they got here, if you will, even though a D is not the standard and the overall objective, the advisory board failed to note how many of those individual students that we took from significantly worse to significantly better. And we believe that was an error because it does not accurately reflect the growth. Briefly, Mr. Sellers, I want Mr. Sellers to talk for about 2 or 3 minutes about the error as it relates to our inability or ineffective plan that we had in place because Ms. Vaquero noted that one of the advisory board members stated that our plan was not efficient enough, and we also believe that that was not correct. We were only given a few moments to speak on the plan that is uploaded and pages long. So Mr. Sellers will speak on the information. This was also presented in our exhibit as it relates to our plan for the future, and it was also presented as part of our oral presentation to the advisory board. So Mr. Sellers, would you speak briefly about what we have in place and and things of that nature?
Sure. Our organization is STARS Math and English Academy. We've been an organization for 20 years, been a standalone nonprofit for 10. We've been working with Eastside Stream Academy for the 2022-23 school year to support their students as well as their instructors. We've operated Saturday programming since December, first providing programming centered around small group tutoring, right, providing assistance where necessary. Parents could request one-on-one tutoring. We had small group instruction as well. We've been focusing for the last 4 weeks on EOG test preparation. So students come in every Saturday, and we work with them on the standards that they're going to see, the grade specific standards that they're going to see. Small groups as well, but making sure that they understand not only the content, but as well as how to approach standardized testing. Right. So time utilization, stress management, rest, diet, all of those things are going to lead to better performance. We've also been working with instructors in providing monthly professional development workshops that have been based on using Teach Like a Champion 3.0, as well as closing the attitude gap. And we provided these monthly, and we'll provide those through May as well. Now, what we've noticed, just a final note about the students in the EOG bootcamp is that, or the Saturday programming, is that since we've pivoted to focusing on EOG programming, is that attendance is up 25%.
Right, and the reason we believe that this is also error is because this information was not presented to the State Board of Education by the advisory board. There was little to no conversation on our willingness to hear Mrs. Vaquero, for example, when she said she noticed Teach Like a Champion was talked about, but it was not being used effectively. We responded by connecting with Mr. Sellers' company to make this happen, not only for the students, but also for the educators. But that information wasn't shared and it wasn't discussed, and we feel that that was a significant error as well. The also transitioning, thank you, Mr. Sellers, the transitioning, the other error, it would be as it relates to the leadership and the environment. In error, it was mentioned that the school has had 11 principals in a 10-year period, and that is also an error. It's not correct. The information that was submitted to the school shows that we had 7 principals. We had interim principals that filled in when necessary as we were going through the hiring process. We specifically noted that these individuals weren't principals; they were just doing the work until we had it. So to present to the state board and others that we've had 11 principals in 10 years without any context is a major error, and it was wrong. When you look at the principals that we did in fact have, of those 7, you see we reported that one had a family issue and resigned, and so then that put us down to about 6. And of the 6 that were remaining, we had only 2 that were terminated, and others resigned because they had another opportunity. And we would argue that when in comparison, looking at those 5 or 6 in comparison to the local schools here in CMS, having that many leaders in a short period of time is really we're really on par with everyone else. Matter of fact, Charlotte-Mecklenburg school system has probably had about 3 or 4 superintendents in the last 3 or 4 years. So to present to the board that we were 11 principals in 10 years was just factually incorrect, and they had that data at the time, but chose to present it otherwise. The other issue was the toxic environment. Again, go back to this due process issue. In the meeting, you'll hear that we received reports from individuals that said that the environment is toxic. They never told us who those individuals were. Nor were we given a opportunity to examine those individuals, and that's a problem. Right? Because again, we didn't have a chance to counter to say, well, let us show you this person's employment record. Let us show you some of the things that they were doing that perhaps were violating the policy. We don't even know who those individuals were, but they made decisions based off of hearsay at best. And unfortunately, that's unlawful in our country. We have a right to cross-examine. We have a right to respond. And it's a major error that they failed to give us that opportunity to do so. I want to briefly, for the sake of time, because we only have about 6 minutes or so left, I'll save the best for last, which is finance. I'm going to hit the nepotism issue. Throughout the course of the process, there were allegations of nepotism, which were very unfortunate and unfounded. We were asked at least on 3 occasions about the number of employees here that work or were related to board members. At our last meeting, we had 1 part-time person that was related to a board member, and specifically, it was there was testimony that was given as it relates to not only the employees. Of note, every person that worked here, we followed we submitted the required documentation. There's state law and there are documents that you have to present when there is a familial relationship, and we followed that process. So it was an error to present to the state board and even to the advisory board that there was some problem because everybody at this school was related to the board, when that was factually not true. And furthermore, even if it were true, we followed the process that was outlined by the state. But then there was also testimony about the relationship between one church and one of our 4 founding board members, Dr. Cruz. It's disheartening, but because that became a primary point of concern for the advisory board and information passed to the state, it was presented that essentially our founding member was self-dealing because we parked the buses that we had. We had 9 buses, and we parked the buses at her husband's church's parking lot. We made it clear to the advisor.
Your volume has gone down, Mr. Bowers.
I'm sorry.
Can
you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. So I go back. I said there was a concern about self-dealing, if you will, that was presented about school buses. We parked 9 school buses at the one church parking lot. And that happens to be our founding board members. Her husband is the pastor of that church. We put out a bid process, and without any question, and we gave this information to the state. This was the cheapest place to park the buses. So going through that bid process, we also gave testimony that we renewed that bid process every 6 months, and that became the cheapest place to park our buses. So we were forthcoming with the information. The error was it was presented as if we were doing something wrong in regards to that relationship. And so when you When you have that information and present it that way, it's an error because it was not shared in its entirety. But again, going back to it, even with all of this information, February the 6th, 2023, the decision was to give them 3 years to go forward, right? Because we talked about, we had some great leadership, we had some great new opportunities, and we look forward to going forward. The reason we did not go forward is because they relied on secret information that we have still yet to see, secret testimony from people who we still don't know, and that opportunity was taken away from us. Certainly last but not least, as it relates to finances, there were issues as it relates to shared as it relates to compliance. We only have a few minutes. Ms. Stevens, if you can hit in bullet format the primary issues as it relates to the finance and compliance issues that were errors. And you're going to have to come up here.
In terms of compliance, every time we receive any information about a non-compliant situation, we did work to correct it and do have letters documenting the correction has been completed and accepted. We did explain that when we were non-responsive, it was because we did not get the information. And then the thing with the finances, one of the things of note about the school is in 2017-18, the enrollment dropped significantly. And so it directly impacted the funding for the school. That is the point at which the school entered into a deficit position, and we were receiving disciplinary and cautionary financial steps. We worked to bring up enrollment. We went from 125 in 2019 to 301 when we began this year. Most of that growth happened when we were still at the old facility. And so between 2019 and 2023, our enrollment grew 240%. And our funding naturally went along with that. We did get a loan at some point that was documented in our audit. However, that loan was, and I don't know the legal term for it, but that loan was rolled over into the purchase price of this facility, and we do not carry any loans, and we are using ADM funds to run the finances of the school, totally.
In the last 30 seconds that we have, the bottom line is we have to go for the areas that it was reported that we had financial issues, and it was overstated. We are financially compliant, but certainly during the Q&A, we can go into greater detail.
Can't hear you, Mr. Bowers.
I was saying that it was reported that we were financially non-compliant. It was ultimately finally reported that we were in compliance. It was overstated, the issues, even when it came to other compliance issues. It was one time, it was an email that was not updated, but it was reported as non-compliant, and the overstatement was an error. And certainly the last but not least, even when one of the board members asked, how is this school growing if things are so bad? The response from Ms. Vaquero was that it's because they have a new building. And we found that to be very disrespectful to our parents, to the community that we serve. Our scholars and our students and our parents are more savvy than that. They're not into a new building. They care about their children. They're here because they have seen the growth in their children. And furthermore, the growth started before we got into the new building. So you don't have minority students here that was excited about a new building. You have people that are seeing growth in their families, and they want to see the school continue. So at this time, we'll stop because we're out of time, and happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you, Mr. Bowers and others. Ms. Becerra, did you want to address any points there?
I would. I think I had 14 minutes reserved. May I begin?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so the first thing I wanted to just kind of an overarching response to that, to some of the argument. The process of bringing a school before the CSAB and before the State Board of Education, or before the CSAB and then bringing a recommendation to the State Board of Education, it's not a trial. It is not a judicial proceeding. There's no cross-examination. There's no witnesses. There is no fundamental right which would trigger extensive constitutional due process rights. The second thing I wanted to mention, because there has been reference to minutes and perhaps misspeaking or not being accurate. The minutes have been provided. They, as well as the live stream, the minutes which were provided to this appeal panel and to the school in the live stream, which is available for all public members, speaks for itself. There were two meetings in front of the CSAB at which the school and its board could respond to any feelings of inaccuracies or unfairness. They were invited and they came in December and also in February. So any errors that might be uncovered during a renewal, any feelings about data that is presented, that is the time to address those. So that our office and so that the CSAB may review and investigate prior to bringing anything to the State Board of Education. None of the errors that I've heard today, I don't believe those were brought up. However, I will also address the fact that those are not actually errors. So the first one is, I think what one of the references that Mr. Davis was making is 115C-218.95. And he is correct that it says that the State Board shall not terminate or not renew the charter of a continually low-performing charter school solely for its CLP status if the charter school has met growth in each of the immediately preceding 3 school years. So while they have met growth in one of the immediately preceding 3 school years, I believe they exceeded it, and I have presented that data accurately. The last 2 years were the 2019 and the 2022 academic growth, which is what we use in the state due to the pandemic. The state grade was an F, and the score for growth was not met. So that would not trigger the provision to which he references. Secondly, there was reference to the February 6th CSAB meeting, and there was an insinuation that they were supposed to be given a 3-year renewal, and then they were given a non-renew, and that there must have been something improprietous happening during that time. In fact, what happened in February 6th, what our office does is we look at the State Board guidelines for renewal. That's a State Board Policy Charter 007. The policy itself is an internal operating policy, and it very clearly, it's a public policy, very clearly says on there, these are the guidelines. These are not, this isn't a box that you fit into and you don't fit anywhere else. We use those to initially place a charter school based on the given data that we have at the beginning of a renewal period. So at the beginning of a renewal review by the CSAB. Eastside Stream was originally placed at a 3-year term, and throughout the period of being interviewed, the CSAB made the determination to place them as a non-renewal. For example, in a kind of opposite scenario, our office had placed another charter school at a non-renewal based on their academic performance, and by that school coming before the board and presenting a very strong plan for improvement and a new leader that they felt very confident in, that school was actually bumped up to a 3-year. So what they're referencing is not actually what they're given, because our office does not give a renewal term. We have no authority to give a renewal term. We simply send the data, we present the data to the CSAB, and the State Board has the authority to grant a renewal term. So that was not an error. That was not anything, any malfeasance. That was simply the initial guideline, and the CSAB voted unanimously to actually make it a non-renewal. Second, comparability. Many charter schools are not happy with the fact that their performance scores are compared to the local LEA. That is, again, that is state policy. That is not something that our office just decides on a case-by-case basis. Every single school that was up for renewal is compared to the LEA in which it resides. Let's see. Also, I would like to say that the state board had a chance to review all materials and records from CSAB. So anything that went to CSAB, it's public record, it's public session. The Eastside stream had the ability to not only review that entire period, but also to make remarks and to address the CSAB in December and in February. So those materials have been reviewed and seen by all parties involved. Nothing has been hid. Our office works with all charter schools in the state. So if somebody calls our office and wants to make a complaint or wants to, talk to us about something that's happening at a school, we have the responsibility to listen to those stakeholders and to guide them. Those stakeholders do not appear as witnesses before the CSAB. We don't provide testimony. Nothing from somebody that may have called our office upset about a school goes before or went before the CSAB in this case. What else? Also, lastly, I would say that in terms of conflict of interest and nepotism, the state board and the state has a fiduciary duty to safeguard the public's interest in the public funding. Our public schools are funded by taxpayers, and it is the state board's duty and the CSAB's duty as a recommending body to review any issues that might relate to conflict of interest or nepotism. So by simply asking questions about that in an open public session, there's nothing that was wrong in terms of that type of questioning. And then finally, the financial noncompliance history. The financial noncompliance history was absolutely presented accurately. It was presented today in my actual presentation, and also to CSAB and State Board as having been off financial noncompliance this year. But the previous years of having multiple noncompliance is also presented. Just like any other charter school, all 38 that came before the board this year, a history of financial noncompliance is reviewed, because you cannot simply look at 1 year financial status and determine if a school is in a proper place to continue serving students and to maintain the public's funding of a public school. I believe that's it.
Okay, thank you very much. I'd like to start out with a question about the materials that Mr. Sue and I have been provided. This is not going to the question of any other communications that are not on the record, and we understand your point that this is your process that's a administrative, legislative type decision, not a quasi-judicial one before the CSAB. But I do just have a question whether do we have the performance data that the CSAB had and the materials that we were provided. We have detailed data on the 2019 school year, but we don't have it on any of the other years, including the more recent ones. You're muted, Ms. Kara.
Sorry about that. It should be in there. In the PDF I have, it's page 29. And that's that's 2018, 2019, 2022. It's 28 and 29. It looks like a PowerPoint.
That was sort of the summarized data.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So any academic data is actually available on the accountabilities website. So oftentimes the CSAB will go and pull that from there, and that has all of the history. But it's too much to put up onto a slide for a presentation.
Right. So I understand it's a public record, but would they ordinarily look at the underlying detail?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely focus on the data that's presented here, because that aligns with the finding of continually low performance. Continually low performing is defined in statute as not met or met and then having a D or an F. So if it's continually low performing, we kind of look at those. We look mainly at the letter grade and then mainly at the growth data, whether they met, not met, or exceeded. And then we also pull out the subgroup data. And in some of the previous site reports, we usually include to prepare a school for a site visit, like we pull the more detailed academic data from that specific year. So some of that you'll see too in the site visits, like a kind of like a screenshot of that.
Okay, thank you.
And I will also say schools are always invited to bring any other data that they may want, and in terms of like internal assessment data or something that we might not be privy to.
Right.
Ms. Beccaro, can you tell me when the package of bait stamp documents from Eastside Stream was presented? In other words, was that set of documents available to the Charter Schools Advisory Board?
With the appeal, was that the appeal packet?
I guess so. That may answer the question. Mr. Bowers, can you tell me when that was generated? Was that just generated for the purposes of this appeal?
Yes, we were given instructions to submit the documents by a deadline, and with clear instructions not to present anything that was not previously presented. We just bait stamped it and put exhibits on it.
Thank you. Ms. Beccaro, can you tell me whether the comparison numbers between Eastside Stream and the Charlotte-Mecklenburg schools is strictly based on a performance metric or whether it includes growth?
It's strictly based on performance, I believe. It's, let me pull that up. It's looking at it's looking at the grade level proficiency. So they look at the number of students that are proficient at grade level. So it's not really taken into account growth, I don't believe.
And is that comparison made on the aggregate proficiency level in the LEA, subgroup level?
The aggregate, but we also do, the aggregate, and then we don't necessarily compare them to the subgroups to the county, unless like the school wants. Some of our schools do bring that data to show that, like, for example, we're doing really great with like the Hispanic population compared to our LEA. But we do, in that same slide that you have in your materials, we pull out the latest subgroup performance so that you can see, and those percentages, for example, like 24% economically disadvantaged students, those are the percentage of economically disadvantaged students that were proficient.
I'd be interested in both of you reviewing the points about fiscal management and the charter, the state office's position and finding that school is deficient on that score, and then what the school's position is. I'm simply a little unclear about that at this point. I don't know whether Mr. Sue is as well, but.
Sure. So our office does not issue the financial noncompliance levels. Those would come from the school business office, but of course we are looped into that so that we are aware of which charter schools are non-compliant. And during the renewal process, there's actually a staff member in charge of internal monitoring and audits that makes a presentation to the CSAB. So in this case, Shirley McFadden made the presentation in February, and she did present that they have made progress and that they were removed from financial noncompliance for this year. But we always present on several years back, and they have a history of not being in compliance. And so that is where that's what we present to the CSAB, and then the CSAB and the state board have to determine whether that is something that they are concerned with or not.
And okay, and I know there's more detail about what that non-compliance pertain to.
The financial? Is that what you're asking about, the financial?
Yes, ma'am.
The financial was a direct result of the drop in enrollment. The school simply did not have adequate funding to do all of its operations out of the ADM funding that they received. And so I think it was the audit of 2018, they were in a deficit. And as I said, we worked our way out of the deficit position through increasing the enrollment. When in February of 2019, when I came in, there were 94 students currently in the school, but the school was fully staffed as if there were 300. And so from that point to current, between reducing expenses, increasing enrollment, and very stringent management of what we did with the funding we did receive, we were able, and I think in the report, in Ms. McFarland's report, she noted that we were at a governmental fund balance of $658,000 positive when we did our audit. So that's what we did. I mean, we just focused on enrolling. Now, some of the children that were enrolled were problematic. They were coming with real behavior issues. We brought in programs to address those behaviors. They were very low academically. We brought in programs to address that. And the COVID funding helped us to be able to bring in additional programs and supports for the children. But basically, we just worked our way out of it.
And Ms. Stevens, I think it's important. And first, I'd like to thank the State Board of Education. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I think it's important to note that some of the founding board members rotated off of the board. And so we kind of went through a board transition period. And that is when the enrollment fell off. There was a drop in enrollment significantly. And some of the founding board members, we came back on the board in 2019. We came back on the board after hearing that the enrollment had dropped tremendously. 3 of us came back on the board in 2019. And when we came back on the board, we began to work with Ms. Stevens and the enrollment. And we began to increase market. We worked hard and marketed and increase that enrollment, as we've already previously noted in the numbers. So I think that's important, and that is significant to know that there are board members who really care about the school and cared enough to come back in to continue to grow this school. I think that's important. But if I may say this, and I hope that I am in order, I have to say that I've been deeply hurt by many of the questions and the comments that were brought up during the visits with OCS. It appeared as if I was doing something that went against regulations, policies, laws, and things of that nature. And I've had to battle with this. These
Ms. Cruz, I don't know that you can hear us, but we can't hear you.
I'm sorry.
We can hear her.
Yeah, I can.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Mr. Phillips, it looks like your screen is frozen. Are you still with us?
Can you hear me now?
We'll need to pause. Here we go. Looks like you're back online.
Thank you. Thank you. And I just wanted to express how important it is to ensure that people aren't humiliated during these public meetings, and they're not made to look as though they're doing something illegal or something that goes against the laws. It hurts me. I founded this school because I care about our students. It matters that our students are performing. And I've been in education for well over 25 years. I've taught in schools across the world. And it's important to me that our families are given a fair chance, that our scholars are given an opportunity to excel. And so the only thing that I have to say, and I'll be done, is that I would hope that whatever decision that you make, I would hope that the Office of Charter Schools would do a better job of not humiliating people when they're in those meetings, and that they will consider the hard work and dedication that board members and staff are extending to grow our scholars. Eastside Stream is a very good school. These are families who are connected. These students are connected to one another. They have relationships. They're connected to their teachers. These are relationships. And to close a school down because of various reasons, and not consider the progress that these students are making, the relationship, the stress that is on the lives of these students and these teachers who are currently still working hard to grow our students, despite the fact that they're hearing negativity, the negative news, despite the fact that there is this axe hanging over their heads that you're going to be shut down and you're going to have to send your students to some other school, that all of these relationships are going to end, is very hurtful for our staff. It's hurtful. I'm so thankful for the board and for our staff at Eastside Stream who are continuing to try and stay focused during this proceeding. They are staying focused. They are working hard to grow our scholars. That matters to us. It matters to the board at Eastside Stream that they're continuing to drive our students and grow our students. And I truly believe the end of this school year, those students are going to show so much growth. And the school as a whole is going to show so much growth at the end of this school year. I will hope that you all will consider the families and the relationships that they built and the hard work that our school is showing at this time. Thank you.
Ms. Stevens, I have a couple of follow-ups to Mr. Dixon's questions about finance.
Yes.
In some of the previous notices of financial noncompliance, there was a reference to going concern issues. Are you aware of any continued question about the viability of your financial setup?
The going concern question was because the school at that point was really just did not have enough enrollment to cover everything. There is no longer a growing concern statement in our audit, and our last audit showed that we had a surplus. We are no longer a going concern.
Thank you. During the time of enrollment decline, according to one of the earlier financial notices, it appears that your predecessor or some predecessor sold some stream of anticipated revenue at a discount of about 30%. Who made that decision? And is that one example?
That was the previous board, none of the current board members nor administrators were even with the school at that time. And those kinds of decisions were made because I just figured through ignorance. To clarify, none of the current board members were with the school from July of 2017 through, I think, Dr. Cruz and Miss Mary were brought back on at the January meeting in 2019. But through that whole period of time, none of the board members were with this school, and Mr. Davis left. In fact, Mr. Davis and I left August 31st, 2017, and Dr. Cruz asked me to come back in February of 2019, and that summer we asked Mr. Davis to come back. And Mr.
So I really just wanted to focus on that one transaction.
Okay.
So you were not involved.
You don't know anything about
that was something that the previous board approved? Or is that
yes, sir. I imagine they did.
All right. Thank you. A few more questions. And
I do follow up on that question. You said that the loan was taken out or paid off in connection with the acquisition of the new building. Was that loan discharged by the owner of the building, the for-profit owner?
The Eastside Stream has the option to purchase this facility after year 3. And what the owner did was write it into the purchase when or if the school purchases the building, if that makes sense.
But was that indebtedness related to operational expenditures?
That indebtedness was based on 2019, and when we came back in 2019, the school was out of everything really but a few federal dollars. I think when we went before CSAB in February of 19, it was reported that the school would be completely out of state funding by March. And so the loan was to allow the school to continue to operate until we could get enrollment up and have public dollars to support the school.
So the $240,000 indebtedness was for current operations, is that correct?
It was for the current
operations. Who lent the money? Can you tell me? Who was the lender?
The lender was American Charter Development.
Thank you. Mr. Davis, I have a couple of questions for you. Mr.
Follow up on that. Who is the owner of the building?
The building is owned by Charlotte Choice Charter Holdings, LLC.
Okay, well, who's the owner of?
And I think the owner of that is American Charter Development.
Right.
This is for Mr. Davis or Mr. Bowers. Mr. Davis, in your presentation, you talked about growth. As I look at the statute, it says, unless the school has met growth in each of the 3 preceding years. And pardon me for jumping from one thing to the other, but I want to understand one thing from Ms. Beccaro first. Ms. Beccaro, it appears that proficiency or growth data from the 1920 school year, I assume because of the impact of COVID. Is that just how it's been done, or is that something that's based on in other words, you consider the 3 preceding years, it appears, to be 17, 18, 18, 19, and then 21, 22, is that right?
Correct, because the state had a waiver from the federal government for state accountability purposes. So we can't use that data as official accountability data. However, we did tell all renewal schools that if they had data during those years they wanted to present internally or like the unofficial data, they were welcome to do so.
All right, thank you. Mr. Davis, I just want to make sure I understand the statute that says the state board may terminate or non-renew unless the school has met growth in each of the 3 preceding years. Are you contending that apart from 2018, which the state has identified as a year where you exceeded growth, that provision applies to you? In other words, have you met growth in each of the 3 preceding years?
And I was referring to that year, in that year of the 18-19 school year there, because we didn't count 19-20. All right, that's correct, right, Ms. Picaro?
Yes, we didn't count 19-20. It's not official state accountability data. It's not public. I think it was provided to schools, but it's not published by the state like we do every other year.
Okay.
So I don't even have it in front of me, so I'm not sure what it would have been.
Okay, so that's where I was referring to.
All right. My question then is, apart from 2018, in the last 2 years, do you take issue with the state's determination, the state's representation that you did not meet growth according to their formulas in each of the 3 preceding years?
Would it? You don't think it is actually that's actually
No.
That is factual.
That is factually true. We did not. The issue is that we were in alignment with several other schools that were allowed to proceed, and the problem is we were also going to be allowed to proceed, with the exception of the fact that they relied on that information from those individuals. We still don't know who they were.
And for the second part of that statute that I just referred to, Mr. Davis, you mentioned an improvement plan. The statute says another thing that would prevent the state board from terminating or non-renewing a charter is if the school has implemented a strategic improvement plan approved by the state board and is making reasonable progress towards student performance goals. I guess my question is the plan that you talked about something that was approved by the state board?
Not that I'm aware of, but it was. They do have that plan that we did submit to them. We have a plan. We have implemented various programs that are helping to raise the scores here based on that, and I can go down if you need me to with the programs that we have put in place here. This is why our scores are already, everything are going up because of what we implemented here.
We followed the instructions given and uploaded it to the system that the state has for the improvement plan. We also set our leadership to the training that they had. There were charter schools there. There were local schools there. And we were given specific instruction that that's what we've been following. So even though we never received an official writing or documentation, if that's something that the state issues, I'm not sure. But we followed the plan as far as what they required us to do and attended the training for submitting a state improvement plan.
Ms. Vaquero, were you or just?
Yes, they're referencing, okay, so North Carolina statute requires a school improvement plan for any low performing school. So of all the hundreds of low performing schools in the state, they all submit a school improvement plan. That's the plan they are referencing. It is not the same as a plan that would fall under 21895. That would be a plan that the state board a request, which they have in, like, for example, they're doing that with some of the schools that are getting a 3-year renewal. They have to submit a specific plan for improvement. So that would not apply. And I would also like to say that it says you have to show that you're making measurable progress towards student performance goals. We have not seen any data which would show that they are making measurable progress. The state data, as well as the EVOS data, does not show that. So if they have that data, we have not been privy to it, which means we cannot show it to the CSAB and the state board who is actually making these decisions, not our office.
Thank you. Mr. Davis, finally, I think this is, at least at this point, my last question. You had raised as an error in Ms. Becerra's presentation and possibly in what was presented to CSAB, the assertion that I think you said that Eastside Stream had not made growth in its history. As I recall from looking at the record and my notes of what Ms. Becerra said, I thought she said that you'd been low performing without regard to whether you'd made growth or not. Do you have a reference that you could share with us to a statement where she said that you hadn't?
Page 2 of your document there on page 2, where we have shown in 2015-16 we met growth, 2016-17 we met growth and exceeded in 2017-18. That's what I read.
So my question was,
all the 10 years we haven't been here, we didn't meet growth, but we did.
I understood the statement, at least what I recall the statement was, and my question really is what was presented to CSAB, and it appeared from the notes at any rate that the representation to CSAB was not about growth, it was about low performing status. Can you point us to a presentation to CSAB that asserted wrongly that you hadn't met growth or exceeded growth on a number of occasions since you were chartered?
Well, that's what I understood that Ms. Becerra was referencing at that when she said that just now. So that's why I responded there, because our school was going up. The trajectory was going up then. So that's what I understood you were talking about, Ms. Becerra, because I can see here what we did on here, which you have that in front of you, I'm sure.
Thank you.
And I'm interested in representatives' reading of this this bar to non-renewal if they've met growth within the past 3 years. That would, as I read that can pertain when non-renewal is based solely on being low performing and not in the absence of other grounds for non-renewal.
Correct. And the charter agreement, as a reminder, it's essentially a contract that is being renewed. And in order to renew it, the state board has to feel that academically, governance, and fiscally that they are in the place to renew it. So it's not, and they've made clear in their motion and in their letter of non-renewal that they were making this decision on several factors, not just academics. But I hope Mr. Davis clarified previously, it's not that they didn't meet growth occasionally, it's that they have been continually low performing, because continually low performing is a different standard.
Right.
May I respond
to
that?
I had a couple of follow-up questions about the leadership. Mr. Ozer has now left the school, is that right?
Yes, Mr. Ozer left. We didn't see a mass exodus, but as you can imagine, when there was the state decided to not renew and he have to appeal, Mr. Ozer is a strong candidate, but he had other options. So obviously he decided to go in a different direction. So he stayed with us as long as he could. Then he took a new position.
Right. So you would be looking for new leadership if you were to continue.
Well, actually, we were very fortunate. Dr. Alexander, obviously, right now we may refer to as interim, but we wanted somebody that had even a more of an academic background. So Dr. Alexander is here. He's the first principal, one of the first ones that we've had with his experience on the collegiate level and the lower level. So he's in the room right now. He would be the leadership. And at the appropriate time, I would like to respond briefly to your question to Ms. Vaquero.
Oh, I'm sorry. Certainly. Which question was that?
It was about the other factors. I think that's the key. I think it's only isolated. It's not isolated to just the academics. It's the other factors, and that's where we find major error when the record shows that we were going to give them 3 years, just like they gave other schools, but then it was other factors. And I think today we've shown evidence that those other factors were in error. Not to mention the calls that came in from unknown sources and other things as it relates to compliance. I think we clarified that when you look at it in its totality, those other factors have been clarified.
Good.
I would dispute that, but I think other factors could pertain to the fact that there has been a consistent turnover of leadership that's been noted and throughout the record, throughout site visits, confirmed by having different people at the school every time we come to visit, but also just, concerns about strong leadership and board turnover. Those sort of things are things that the CSAB and the state board have the right to ask about and could contribute to their findings.
But it was presented to the board that we had 50% more turnover in our principals than were actually maybe.
This is not really a time for you guys to argue with each other.
Right.
How many different principals have there been over the course of the 10 years?
There have been 7 principals, and we had 4 interims as we were working to hire the new principal. And what was stated was that we had 11 principals, which was an error.
Okay, thank you. You say you've had 7 permanent principals and 4 interims, or is the 4 included in the 7?
The total number, sir, is 11. 7 principals and 4 interim.
Right. Okay. I don't know that I have any other questions at this point.
None for me.
All right. All right. Well, I want to thank everyone for their participation and for the presentations from the Office of Charter Schools and from Eastside. Appreciate that this is a matter of importance to everyone here. And Mr. Sue and I are going to confer and make our recommendation as soon as possible.
Thank you to both sides for extremely well done presentations, for your courtesy to each other in the panel.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. We'll close the hearing.
Okay.
All right. Have a good day.
Recording.